There comes a point in life when you realize it's no longer possible to keep living the same way. I reached that point when I understood that no matter how much I worked, it always felt like I was running in circles. The bills never balanced. The exhaustion was constant. And inside, a voice kept whispering, "You were born for more than this." It was in that uncomfortable silence that I realized something. Wealth doesn't begin when money shows up, but when identity changes. Before becoming a millionaire on the outside, you need to become a millionaire on the inside. And this transformation has nothing to do with luck or magic formulas. It comes from silent secrets, discreet practices, almost invisible habits that reshape who you are to the point where no one recognizes you anymore, because you yourself no longer see the world the same way. In 2026, you could be unrecognizable. And today, I'm going to reveal the 10 millionaire secrets that showed me how that's possible. If this resonates with you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's walk this journey together, because your new version starts now. Secret 1. I learned to think big even when I was still small. I always saw myself as just an ordinary person. Someone who worked hard but had to settle for little. That was the story. Do what you can. Don't dream too much. Don't take risks. And for a long time I believed it. But thinking small doesn't protect you. It limits you. The turning point came when I realized no one was ever going to hand me permission to dream bigger. If I wanted it, I had to give that permission to myself. That's when I started practicing, visualizing scenarios that scared me, imagining incomes I'd never had, projecting a lifestyle that once felt unreachable. At first, it seemed like make-believe, but little by little that exercise shifted my posture. When you think big, your mind starts searching for paths that match that vision. You no longer settle for patchwork solutions. You stop squeezing yourself into spaces that shrink you. And most importantly, you start acting as if the impossible is already under construction. That's when I realized the difference between those who stay stuck and those who become unrecognizable lies in this inner boldness. It's not arrogance, it's training. It's refusing to think small even when reality hasn't caught up yet. Today, I understand that thinking big isn't about ignoring where I am, but about honoring where I want to go. And every decision I make now is guided by that expanded vision. Comment, my mind already lives at my next level. If you've also decided to leave small thinking behind. Secret 2. I treated my money as an ally, not a burden. For a long time, I saw money as a problem. If it was missing, I suffered. If there was extra, I felt guilty. It was as if every cent carried tension, fear, or shame. And so, instead of being an ally, money became a silent enemy. The shift happened when I realized money only amplifies what already exists. It doesn't create character. It doesn't invent priorities. It simply magnifies who you already are. And if I wanted to be a millionaire, I first had to become someone who could handle money in any circumstance. I started with small steps. Writing down my expenses, checking my bank statement instead of avoiding it, setting aside a percentage for myself before paying any bills. At first it seemed insignificant, but by relating to money consciously, my energy changed. I stopped feeling like its hostage and began to feel like I had choices. That's when I understood. Money doesn't control me, I direct it. It's not a burden, it's a resource. Not an enemy, but a partner. And the more I learned to treat it with respect and clarity, the more it began to flow into my life. Today, it doesn't define my worth. It simply sustains the life I chose to build. And this shift in perspective was a turning point on my journey to becoming unrecognizable. Comment, my money is my ally. If you're also ready to change that scarcity mindset and turn money into a growth partner. Secret 3. I learned to protect my energy as if it were my greatest asset. For a long time, I thought productivity meant being busy all the time. I said yes to every invitation, got involved in pointless arguments, spent hours on social media, and by the end of the day, I was drained, without having done anything truly important. The energy that could have been invested in my dreams, I was wasting on distractions. It was only when I realized my energy was limited and precious that everything changed. If I didn't direct it, the world would do it for me. And most of the time, it would use me as fuel for causes that weren't mine. I started setting filters, choosing carefully who I spent time with, where I placed my attention, what I allowed into my mind. Saying no stopped being guilt and started being protection. I discovered that when I take care of my energy, my focus multiplies, my ideas become clearer, and my decisions more accurate. Today, I know lost money can be recovered, but wasted energy never comes back. That's why I treat my energy as the most valuable asset I own. It's the root of everything: health, wealth, confidence, presence. Becoming unrecognizable starts with how you manage your life force. And those who learn to protect it inevitably become magnetic, because their light isn't drained by tasks and people who only consume. Comment: my energy is my greatest asset. If you've also decided to shield your life force and invest it only in what builds you up. Secret 4. I built discipline when I still had no motivation. I used to wait to feel inspired before starting. I waited for Monday, the next month, the next phase of life. And while I waited, the days went by, without real change. That's when I understood that motivation is unstable, but discipline is a choice. And if I wanted to become unrecognizable, I couldn't rely on fleeting emotions. I started small, waking up at the time I had promised myself, writing down my goals every day, taking care of my body even on days I didn't want to. At first, it was uncomfortable, but little by little, that consistency built self-respect. I discovered that discipline isn't rigidity, it's freedom. It's being able to trust myself without depending on chance or luck. It's knowing that even on bad days, I keep moving toward the life I chose. And the more I kept those small commitments to myself, the stronger my identity became. I began to see myself as someone capable of carrying great things, not because everything was perfect, but because I didn't quit on the days when everything felt hard. The woman you admire isn't built on bursts of motivation. She is built in the silent repetition when no one is watching. That's what made me understand that discipline is the bridge between who I was and who I'm becoming. Comment: my discipline is my superpower. If you've also decided to stop waiting for inspiration and started acting with consistency. Secret 5. I learned to stand my ground without fear of judgment. For a long time, I silenced my own voice. I accepted other people's opinions even when I disagreed, accepted invitations I didn't want, smiled through situations that drained me, all to avoid conflict, to be accepted, to avoid being judged. But in trying to please others, I was losing myself. Until one day I realized judgment will always exist. Even when you get it right, someone will criticize. Even when you get it wrong, someone will point fingers. And if I couldn't control judgment, the only real choice was to live true to who I am. I started standing my ground in small things, saying I don't want to, instead of making excuses, sharing my opinions without watering them down just to fit expectations, setting clear boundaries without guilt. And interestingly, the more authentic I was, the more respect I received. I discovered that standing my ground isn't about shouting louder or being aggressive. It's simply about holding your own without shrinking to fit. It's living in coherence. And that coherence becomes magnetic because it radiates confidence and authenticity. Today, I understand I wasn't made to please everyone. I was made to be whole. And that wholeness was a turning point on my journey to becoming unrecognizable. Comment: my voice carries weight. If you've also decided to stop living in silence and started standing for who you truly are. Secret 6. I took care of my image before the world defined me. There was a time when I believed appearance was vanity. I neglected myself, repeated the phrase, "What matters is what's inside," as an excuse, and got uncomfortable when someone mentioned presence. But in reality, my image was speaking for me before I even opened my mouth, and without realizing it, I was letting the world define me through signals I was unconsciously sending. The shift happened when I understood that taking care of my image wasn't superficiality, it was strategy. My posture, my tone of voice, my clothes, my self-care, all of that communicated something. And I needed to take control of that narrative. I started with simple adjustments, replacing outfits that made me feel small with clothes that reflected the woman I was becoming, paying attention to how I sat, walked, and greeted people, and most importantly, aligning my energy with what I wanted to transmit. The results were immediate. People looked at me differently. Opportunities opened up more easily, not because I had changed who I was, but because my image finally matched the identity I was building. Taking care of my image wasn't about fitting in. It was about showing the world, without words, that I was no longer the same. And that made me unrecognizable, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. Comment: my image is an extension of my identity. If you've also realized that presence speaks louder than explanations. Secret 7. I learned to shield my inner circle. For years, I surrounded myself with people just because they were around. Coworkers, old friends, family members who always had an opinion. And without realizing it, I was absorbing their patterns. If they complained, I complained. If they were afraid, I shrank my dreams. If they talked about scarcity, I believed wealth wasn't for me. My circle was a mirror of the life I lived, not the life I wanted to build. The shift began when I realized energy is contagious, and if I wanted to become unrecognizable, I had to choose carefully who had access to my space. Not out of arrogance, but out of protection. I started stepping away from conversations that only drained me, from people who mocked those who dared to dream. And at the same time, I sought to get closer to what expanded me. Women already living the standard I was aiming for, content that inspired me, environments that lifted my vision. At first it was lonely, because shielding your circle also means holding the empty space between letting go of the old and not yet having the new. But that space was fertile. It was there that I began to grow stronger until I naturally attracted aligned connections. Today, I know my wealth isn't just financial, it's energetic. And having the right people around me is one of the greatest keys to sustaining a new identity. Comment: my circle strengthens me. If you're also ready to shield your energy and choose to be around those who add to your life. Secret 8. I learned to turn failures into experience capital. For a long time, every mistake felt like a burden. I blamed myself, felt ashamed, and hid my failures as if they were proof of my incapacity. And the more I hid them, the more paralyzed I became. It was as if each failed attempt confirmed I wasn't born to achieve great things. The shift happened when I realized the millionaires I admired weren't people who never failed. They were people who had failed more times than I had even tried. What set them apart wasn't the absence of failure, but the ability to turn it into fuel. I began looking at every mistake through a new lens, asking, what is this trying to teach me? What skill am I building here? How can I use this experience to become stronger? And over time, each failure stopped being a burden and became an invisible investment, experience capital. I discovered that confidence doesn't come when everything works out. It is born from overcoming, from realizing that even when the plan fails, I'm still standing, more prepared and more aware. Today, I don't run from my failures. I study them, write them down, thank them. Because I know that without them, I wouldn't have built the unrecognizable version of myself I carry now. Comment: I turn failure into strength. If you've also realized that every fall is just a step toward your rise. Secret 9. I made my daily habits non-negotiable. For years, I sabotaged myself with little concessions. I promised to wake up early but hit snooze. Planned to study but left it for later. Swore I'd start saving but spent on impulse. These slips seemed small, but together they kept me stuck in the same pattern, living on repeat. The change came when I realized greatness isn't built in extraordinary moments, but in the sum of small daily choices. It didn't matter how much I declared I wanted to be a millionaire. If my actions didn't back up that identity, I was lying to myself. That's when I made my daily habits non-negotiable. It didn't matter if I was tired or unmotivated. Some things would simply happen. My workout, my reading, my financial discipline, my inner affirmations, they were no longer negotiations with my mood of the day, but commitments to the woman I was becoming. At first it was hard, but through repetition, those habits became part of me. And suddenly, it wasn't effort anymore. It was identity. And that's how millionaires live. They don't decide every day whether or not they'll follow through. They just do it. Today, my habits sustain me even when motivation doesn't show up. And that gives me the freedom to focus on growing, instead of always restarting. Comment: my habits define me. If you've also decided to make non-negotiable the very things that will lead you to your unrecognizable version. Secret 10. I learned to live as if I were already the woman I dream of being. For a long time, I felt stuck in the future. When I have money, I'll take better care of myself. When I reach that position, I'll dress better. When things improve, I'll act differently. The problem was that future never arrived, because my actions in the present didn't match the version of myself I claimed to want. The turning point came when I realized identity comes before results. I didn't need to wait to be a millionaire to live like one. I could start now, in small choices, in how I carried myself, in the habits I sustained. I began asking myself every day, what would the woman I want to be do in this situation? And then I acted according to the answer. If it was about finances, I chose as she would. If it was about posture, I moved as she would move. And little by little, that practice transformed my present. It wasn't about spending more than I could or creating a life of appearances. It was about anticipating the behaviors that build wealth, confidence, and power. And before I knew it, that future version wasn't far away anymore. She had become part of me. Today, I don't wait for the world to recognize me first. I already recognize myself as that woman. And it's that certainty that makes me unrecognizable each day. Comment: I already live as the woman I want to be. If you've also decided to stop waiting and start anticipating your millionaire version now. Reaching this point wasn't about magic. It was about silent decisions, uncomfortable repetitions, and choices that seemed small but changed everything. Becoming unrecognizable isn't about wearing a new mask. It's about revealing the version that's always been inside you, the one that refuses to just survive, because she knows she was born to thrive. The 10 secrets I shared aren't just isolated steps. They connect, they reinforce each other, and they create a new identity that automatically makes space for wealth, confidence, and power. Because when you think big, treat money as an ally. Protect your energy, build discipline, stand your ground, care for your image, shield your circle, turn failures into strength, make habits non-negotiable, and already live as the woman you dream of being. There's no way you'll stay the same. The world won't recognize you anymore because you're no longer the same. And maybe that's the greatest secret of all. Transformation happens before the results appear. First inside, then outside. First in who you become, then in what you achieve. So if you've made it this far, ask yourself, which of these secrets will be your starting point today? Because it's not about tomorrow, it's about now. Comment, I'm ready to be unrecognizable if this video was the reminder you needed. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is the moment. Hit the like button, activate the bell, and keep following along, because your new version is just beginning to be born.